audio and visual podcast, a weekly discussion about all things guitar building and some random tangents as well, featuring members of the Guitar Builders Collective from all around the world. The Guitar Builders Collective is a like-minded group of individuals that have come together to share their experiences, knowledge and inspiration for guitar building. Each week you can join us in the live YouTube chat or catch up at a later point. It's also available as audio, where you'll miss out on seeing our lovely faces and some of the visuals we share along the way. You can also find the Guitar Builders Collective via our forum, over on Instagram, where we share images of members' builds. We've got a thriving Facebook group, and we do hope that no matter what your experience and knowledge is, you'll become a welcome member of this community too. Fantastic.
Hello.
We're live. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, for those of you that are watching, you can see everyone that's here, and I'll introduce this in a minute. But obviously, we're on audio as well. So for anyone listening along, if we share anything visual, we'll try and describe it, but you can catch it in the description for the link, description for the video, and in the podcast. We've got links to everything anyway. So I'm here. I'm back with Dave, also in the UK from Footstep Guitars.
Hi there.
Away for a few weeks.
Yeah.
We've got over in Australia, Corey from Saul Guitars joining us again, along with Brad from BB Guitars. And our new face this week, first time guest, is Barnaby Ralph, who is currently based in Japan. In fact, I presume you've been based in Japan a long time, Barnaby.
I have, and for anyone listening on audio, if you can't see me, I'm about 6 foot tall, extraordinarily muscular, and I have flowing blonde hair.
Yeah. and prior to us actually going live, Barnaby also tried to start a fight. True story. Between Dave and Corey. Brad missed that.
Which way is he?
No, one of the exciting things for me anyway about today is over the course of doing this for 2 years, we've had guests on from all around the world and people that have traveled around the world as well. And it's just interesting for me to hear what it's like having a workshop, doing repairs, building, having access to tools and materials in different countries. Because although we all have a shared maybe way of working or similar ways of working, there's limitations based on where we are that often affect and change what we're doing. So it's very exciting to have that. But maybe we should start actually, Barnaby and Corey. Corey suggested we contact Barnaby because you two knew each other, and it was from back in the day of early contact on forums. Maybe you could tell us a bit about that. That's okay.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I had joined a forum called My Les Paul, which has a really good kind of Luthier section, and I had started on that. I started making a kick guitar, and then with the limitations of my own building, I was forced to use hand tools. So I was living in a really small apartment and I couldn't use even a power drill because the neighbors would complain. So I started making guitars with hand tools, various things, Telecasters and Les Paul types and all that sort of thing. Became a kind of known person on the website, kind of as this crazy guy in Japan, right? Especially after, I have to say, we had a big earthquake here in 2011. You guys probably remember that. It was a huge earthquake. And I was in Tokyo for that. And I remember one of the interesting things that happened was I was working on a guitar when it happened. And I was sanding the top. And suddenly the guitar started moving by itself. And it was sanding itself for me. And I thought, oh, this is brilliant. This is fantastic. And then I went outside and, and the road was literally, it was like moving like a tongue. It was a crazy thing. And after that, there was a lot of interest in what it was like for people in Japan. And so I became kind of well known on that forum, and Corey knew me through that time. And after that, and we connected and started talking about a lot of things. I remember Corey starting building, and, he had lots of questions about stuff, and we became mates, really. It's funny because we've never met in real life. And in fact, this is the closest we've ever gotten to interacting. Yeah, it's weird. But, we interacted on the website. Corey, I sent you some pickups too, I remember.
Yeah, Max Packers.
The Muxbuckers is for some guitars. So, wine pickups too. And, and we just kind of... Oh, you got it there?
Oh, yeah, there's still one in the parts drawer over here.
Oh, yeah. Do they work
They
all right?
still work.
Oh, yeah. Sweet.
Yeah, I've got one in the roll kit. And I had one in another guitar, but I ended up pulling it out. So it's sat in with some other pickups. And I'm hopeless with gear. I just... like truss rods. I've got so many truss rods, and then I just buy more.
I'm exactly the same. Yeah, I mean...
So before we talk about all of the Japanese related excitement of you being on that forum, but was that forum basically people that were builders or people that just like Les Pauls? What was the kind of content of it?
The forum itself was for Les Paul fans, but it had something called the Luthier's Corner. And for some reason, there were a couple of these forums where some really good pro builders would kind of congregate. And so the Les Paul one, there was a guy on there called Freddie Gabrasek, who is one of Canada's foremost luthiers. He does the work for, Alex Lifeson of Rush. He does his guitars. Right. There was a guy on there called Roman Wrist, and Roman Wrist, he was working with people like Peter Baronet, who's a guy who did guitars for Slash back in the day. Roman Wrist was a luthier for people like Yngwie Malmsteen and Billy Idol. And so you had schmucks on there like me. And then you had these guys who were working with the leading pros worldwide. Yeah. And so it was a really kind of interesting mix of people. It was a really good mix. So there were some amazing people on there, and they weren't all just Les Paul people either. They made all sorts of other guitars.
Right. Yeah.
We did try to get in contact with Freddie about coming on, but it never got past him. I don't even think it got to email stage. Like I asked him in the forum, and then he said, "Yeah, sure," and then tried emailing him, and we haven't heard back. So
I mean, Freddie's amazing. Yeah, he's someone else I've exchanged stuff with. He's got some of my pickups, and in return, he sent me a bit of a bit of walrus ivory, fossilized walrus ivory for a nut, and I've got that sitting in a parts drawer, and it's the other half. It's the other half of a nut he cut for Alex Lifeson for a Telecaster.
Oh, cool.
That's actually sitting in a parts drawer waiting to go. I may actually put that on a guitar I'm building at the moment. So, yeah.
Oh, amazing. Hey, look, I want to get back to how the forum worked and things like that. Yeah. I want to get back to how you got into building and everything. But maybe can we just summarize what you are doing now? Because you've just mentioned you do pickup winding. You mentioned that at one point you were only using hand tools. But now, what sort of making? What do you do? Give us a picture so we can understand who Barnaby Ralph is and what he does.
Well,
other than the long flowing hair, of course.
Yeah. The huge muscular torso. Yeah. So basically, I'm a. So I work here in Japan. I've got a really rather dull job. I'm a university professor. I'm a professor at the University of Tokyo. Which is a cool place to work because it's the only university outside Japan that anyone's ever heard of here. So so I do that, and it's kind of a stressful job. I got these long sort of 3-hour weekly faculty meetings in Japanese and all that sort of stuff, and it's awful. And so I needed something to get rid of my stress, to take me out of my job, and so that's why I started building. But at the moment, what I do, I have a workshop in Tachikawa, which is in Greater Tokyo, and it's a small, very pleasant little workshop. I use power tools now. I will build. So I'm building electric guitars. I work on my own designs. I make Tele style guitars as well, and Les Paul style guitars, all sorts of things. And I do a lot of repairs. I've developed a kind of speciality genuinely in repairing broken Gibson headstocks. I'm sure that other people have done that too. That you get the smile, they call it, on the back of the headstock. So I often will help people out with that. but I do lots of other repairs. And I wind pickups, I do electronics, and I've recently started working with a guy called Francesco Sondelli. And Francesco is the owner of a thing called Sondelli Guitars. And Sondelli Guitars they're a really cool brand. He's just been at NAMM, and I put together 4 guitars for him for NAMM. And I'm putting together another 4 at the moment, which are going out to Europe. So, I do a range of things. But one thing I should mention is, sorry, I'm going on a bit. One thing I should mention is that I do this work for charity. So I'll make a guitar. I will then donate it to somebody. And then what will happen is that person will decide what the guitar is worth. They will then donate that amount to a charity. Now, I don't check up on them and, nag them about it, but you get all sorts of things like that. So I might wind some pickups, send them to someone, and they will then donate, I don't know, a couple of $100 to Médecins Sans Frontières or something. And I've done repairs and building that way for 15 years. It means I've got a huge waiting list, but yeah, I've been doing it that way for a long time. I'm not always going to do it that way. One of these days, I'm probably going to turn around and start charging like a wounded bull. But,
Yes,
but right now, that's how I do it. Yeah, the relationship with Sondelli Guitars is a little bit different because that's professional lutherie. But what I'm doing in my own workshop is a different thing.
That's fantastic. I'm always surprised, or not surprised. I'm always impressed by the amount of people we have on who, maybe not to the extent you are, but who make guitars for charity. It feels like that this sort of luthier community, particularly people that aren't necessarily full-time builders, are building for a love of building and like to have that giving back element to it. I know there's a few people here that have done that. In the chat, we've got Paul from Milehouse. He does that as well. It's incredible. Yeah. So the pickups you wind, tell us a little bit about those, because pickup winding is quite often a sort of different skill to building, and people tend to buy them in. But how did you get into the winding element?
Well, again, when I think I made my 2nd or 3rd guitar, and the challenge was to try and do as much as I could by hand. And so I thought, let's have a go at making the pickups too. I just kind of wanted to learn about how everything worked. And originally I bought this old hand cranked winder with a little counter on it. And I sat there kind of winding this spool on, and it was a really terrible way to wind a pickup. It made awful pickups. But it kind of taught me how they worked. And then I bought an actual pickup winder, a proper professional pickup winder. And I learned about how you wind a coil. So I learned about coil geometry, what they call scatter winding. I learned about different wire gauges, even things like whether the coating on the wire is polyurethane or whether it's some kind of lacquer or enamel, or whether it's formvar or whatever it is, the effects of different magnets. And then when you pot the pickups, are you going to use beeswax, or are you going to use paraffin, or are you going to mix them? Fender, for example, back in the day used a paraffin beeswax mix with, I think they did anyway, but it was infused with carbon, which made the pickups black when you potted them. And there's all this argument, did they do that because it increased capacitance and it changed the tone? But the reality was, they dipped them in black lacquer, black wax, because that way they could tell which pickups had been potted and which ones hadn't on the production line. That was it.
There's so many things Fender have done for practical reasons that lots of people now think is the holy grail reason, and for reasons of audio quality.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like they developed a technique for pushing frets in from the side, and it was entirely done because it was convenient manufacturing. But there are people who've tried to recreate their jigs for doing it, and they've got their own crazy techniques for doing all of this sort of stuff. And so this is an example of that. But I make mostly humbuckers and single coil pickups. I make Strat style, Tele style. I make P90s. I particularly like. I've got one on a guitar here actually. sitting here in the back. That's one of my P90s. From there, and in this guitar, which is sitting here, this is a pair of my humbuckers. I'll move that across from back in the day.
Oh, no, I'm going to ask about that guitar in a moment, but just to help with the picture of the history of your guitar building, all of this learning is stuff you've taught yourself, I assume. It sounds like from the so. Was your learning via places like forums or books, or was it YouTube? Was when you were learning, was YouTube up there doing these things?
What happened was it was forums and online posts and things, right? So it was mostly forums. I didn't do that much on YouTube. And what happened was, I remember when I started building, a mate of mine who was a woodworker said to me, what you got to do is you got to get your wood, stick it in one corner, get all your tools, stick them in another corner, look at them and go, I'm smarter than both of those things. And then you're going to be fine. And that was kind of the approach I used. I mean, I ruined a bit of wood starting out. I'm sure no one else has ever done that.
All perfect first time
on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, you know, and so, but yeah, I did a lot of my work via forums. The one course I have done is I went for 2 weeks to Malaysia, and I built an acoustic guitar with a guy called Jeffrey Yong. And Jeffrey is an amazing guy. He runs this course where you turn up and you build a guitar out of non-traditional woods, you know, Malaysian woods and things. And it's a 2-week course. What you take from it is not necessarily acoustic building per se. It's an understanding of processes and an approach to building, a philosophy to building. And so I built an acoustic guitar with him, which was great fun. That was made out of a wood called monkey pod. And, you know, so I studied a bit with him, but yeah, mostly it had been on forums. And by the time YouTube came along, I also taught myself to do things because there are a lot of people online who were telling me, oh, that's impossible. You can't do that by hand, or, you know, and so I figured out a way to do stuff. I figured out ways to do things. I figured out old tools that people weren't using so much in the guitar building community that would work for me, like bow saws and router planes, these hand tools. Now you see them on people's benches, but back when I started out, they were kind of esoteric. So
that monkey pod is fucking gorgeous too.
Cheers.
So out of interest, I realized that at the moment I've only linked to your YouTube channel in the video description here. If we wanted to see photos of what you've done, is there an archive? Is there a social media or a website place?
Yeah. So my Facebook is the same as my real name, Barnaby Ralph. And so if you go on Facebook, it's open, you can have a look. And there are photos that go way back of my builds, of repairs I've done, things I'm working on at the moment. So my YouTube channel, which is under the name Tombo LP, TOMBO-LP, all one word, that's got build diaries stretching back, again, 14 or 15 years.
Right.
Bankirai. Yeah. It's really, really hard wood. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, so my stuff is on social media, on YouTube, through that Tombo LP thing. Tombo, by the way, is the Japanese word for dragonfly. And when I started out, my idea was going to be, I was going to make guitars and they'd have a dragonfly on the headstock. And I was going to be making LP style guitars. And then I discovered that lots of other people use dragonflies on their headstocks. And I went, oh. So, but that YouTube name is a leftover from that time. So yeah, my YouTube channel is kicking along.
Right. Yeah. So sorry, I didn't realize it was your Facebook page, because I don't like to share people's personal Facebook pages without asking them.
Absolutely fine.
Do you mind then if I share a couple of images on the screen while we chat?
Please. Yeah,
I'll do
absolutely. Yeah. Not that one of being a donkey. I was young. I needed the money.
Right, I'm just clicking the right buttons to share. So what I didn't realize beforehand, so I knew that you had moved to Japan at some point, but had previously been in Australia. I didn't realize you started building when you're in Japan. And one of the things that I'm fascinated by is the access people have to materials and equipment and tools and things. So, for example, in this country, there are places now I can get lots of luthier tools, but for a while I was just very jealous of Americans and access to Stu Mac, although nowadays I do buy from them. But a lot of the tools that a lot of us sort of drool over are Japanese tools. Did you have an equivalent of like a B&Q, the local hardware store, that you go in and instead of cheap, nasty tools, you've got a range of amazing Japanese things out there?
Well, I mean, I did, but I didn't know it was there. So it took me a long time to kind of find that stuff. It took me a long time to figure out where the local hardware stores were, which carried the good tools, and which of those tools I would want. And there, for example, you can see a set of chisels. Those are Ashley Illes chisels, and those I got from there. I got them from Britain. And I have Japanese chisels, but here's a horrible thing, and I hate to say this on a lutherie forum, is that for a lot of the work I'm doing, Western bench chisels are actually kind of better set up for the woods I want to use and the types of angles I want to cut. Japanese chisels are great, and they look really, really romantic, and they're so cool, but they're not necessarily the best chisels for working with certain hardwoods and doing other things. So Western chisels are generally my go-to. I have that's a Les Paul that I restored for someone that had belonged to a punk rocker, and punk rocker makes me sound old, doesn't it? Punk rock guy, and it had holes in it. It was, the headstock was broken off, it was smashed up, and he tried to repaint it with house paint. Absolutely, it was fantastic. It was, yeah, very punk. It was mostly covered in swear words and house paint and all that sort of stuff. And this rather conservative Canadian journalist said, you know, can you make it so I can play this guitar on stage? So I stripped it back and did everything, repainted in the Les Paul style. Yeah, you can see it all there. And then reassembled it. And yeah, that's me doing some inlay work. Yeah, but yeah, so I do have some great Japanese tools, but I've got to be honest, I tend to prefer using Western chisels. I tend to prefer using Western hand planes because Japanese tools are mostly made for softwoods. They're made for things like sugi and kiri. Sugi is like a cedar, and kiri is like a paulownia. And they're great at that, but they're not necessarily the best for electric guitar making. If I was doing acoustic and working with a lot of spruce, I'd probably, you know, use a lot of those too. Japanese saws are the one exception. They're the thing. They're great. Japanese fret saws, particularly. I can go down to my local hardware shop and get those. Yeah, they're really good.
I think it's I've got a Japanese fret saw. Maybe I've got two, and also it's the Japanese files. They're the things that people.
Oh, they're great. Yeah, Do you guys here use the Shinto rasp?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
all the time.
I think everyone.
Yeah,
it feels like there's a moment in your life as a luthier or a guitar builder where you discover the Shinto rasp. And or for me, all my other rasp and surf form planes just went in the drawer. Don't use that.
I know. I sleep with mine. It really annoys my wife. But, yeah. No, it's the Shinto rasp is, and I can wander down the road here, and I can pull one off the shelf, and you know, $20 or whatever it is. It's just the local rasp. So, yeah. Oh, and of course, the other thing for me that's really good here, that is probably expensive in other places, is sharpening stuff, Waterstone.
Yeah.
So again, my local hardware shop, I can get quite cheaply a selection of amazing Waterstones, up to the really finest grits and tools for sharpening and everything. So, you know, that's not stuff I need to buy overseas. I can get all that here.
I have to say, I do love my laminated blade for the Stanley I've got. That's a Japanese, and that is so sharp. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are some really good Japanese steels. Yeah.
So to put more of a picture on this, because I've not been to Japan. I don't know if the rest of you have. I know Scott, who's not here from Bonehead Guitars, lived there just for a year, but did live there. And he said it was days every day, because every day was like seeing new things. But if there's access to those kind of tools, do people in their everyday lives have an understanding of woodwork? Is that more common maybe than it is in the UK?
I think it is something you will still see here, less and less these days, but you will still see it. You'll see traditional woodworkers' ateliers, their workshops. You will see them with the tools kind of up. The thing is, though, as generations retire or die out, a lot of those guys, they kind of work up until death. Those places then close down and real estate developers move in. So in central Tokyo, those are starting to vanish. But if you go out into the countryside, you'll see a lot more of that. And if you know, everybody has their tool drawer. You know, they've got a screwdriver and 3 batteries that don't fit in anything, and, you know, one of those multi-plier set things. Well, here in Japan, one of the things you'll often find in people's tool drawers is you'll actually find like a small Japanese plane. Especially if it's an older house, because if you've got sliding doors, if you've got a room with tatami and you've got sliding doors and they stick, you need a kind of plane that goes into a channel, and you just run it along a few times and then your doors move. So tools that seem really strange or esoteric outside Japan are, they're in the parts drawer.
Amazing, because I like I'm sure a lot. In fact, I know a lot of the guests we've had on before talk about tools they use, or the first tools they used that were grandparents' tools passed down. And I've definitely got some of those. But I love the idea that, of course, different tools for different needs that are passed down and potentially used in that way. And then in this country, I think anyway, in this country, guitar building is definitely becoming more popular. But I think that's partly because people buy kits now. You buy a kit for a guitar, you can build it, that you can buy things to upgrade and customize guitars. That's very common. Is that, do you come across that in Japan through the shops you work with?
So ESP, who are, their guitars are really popular electric guitars. They're sold worldwide, and they're connected with a lot of those other factories. They run a guitar making course. In Osaka, there's a big festival for guitar builders every year. It's a sound messer. And in Tokyo, there's a guitar builders thing where a lot of acoustic guitar builders show. And you can go along there, see guitar builders work, but you also can see lots of tools for sale, lots of wood for sale. It's a great place to get old stock, like pre-band Brazilian rosewood fingerboards and things like that, you know. And so, yeah, guitar building is taking off. And in fact, one of the things I'm genuinely thinking of doing when retirement rolls around, whenever that is buying a place in the country and setting up a kind of weekend course for disenfranchised salarymen. They can get away from their screaming kids and their grumpy wife for a weekend, and come along and take them through the process of building a guitar. From bare wood, from bare wood to more or less sort of finished product, and they can go back home with a new guitar. And so that's actually something I'm looking into right now. Is doing something like that in the future. Yeah,
it's a lot of fun, that one.
Yeah, you guys. I guess you guys all do some teaching too, right?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I mean, for me, it's also, there's a big thing is the legal minefield of what do I do, when someone, chops a finger off or something.
Yeah, just insurance and just.
Yeah. I mean, in Japan, it's not so bad because if it happens, they just spend the rest of their life going, yeah, I was in the Yakuza. But
I told the young fellas.
Sorry, Corey.
Do you want to go first?
No, you please.
Oh, I told the young fella's dad, who I had, when I taught him how to make telly, I just said anything's done at his own risk, and if it's too dangerous, I'll just do it.
Yeah,
Well, he was happy sanding, and he did as much as he wanted to. So, yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I've taught a few people, and I guess you guys have also all had that experience that you'll meet people who can just do it, and then you'll meet other people who can't cut a straight line with a mitre box, you know. And you gotta be able to negotiate both of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've taught. One of the funny things I've noticed, and I don't know why this is that actually I've had both men and women come and build guitars with me over the years, and for some reason, Japanese girls, if they're sitting down and building a guitar, you say do this, and they'll focus and they'll do it perfectly, unbelievably well, and you just sit there going, "Oh God, I wish I was that good at it." So I'm rather hoping that more Japanese women get into lutherie, because I think that, you know, they could be the future of it. It's
amazing. Yes, so my background is in teaching, but of art, not of guitar building. And most places I work, well, not most, a lot of the places I work require me to have my own insurance when I go in there. Some of the bigger organisations, the universities, do have insurance that covers you, but a lot of them don't. But the universities I teach at, I often used to work with international students, and I found it so interesting, the difference of teaching people that have learnt in different countries. So for example, I often work with people that were between 16 and 18 that were here on their school holidays trying to learn a bit about art, potentially to study art at the universities I was working at. And in some of those countries, they don't teach art in school. If you do art, you do it outside of school. Or if you do art in school, it's like a main focus, and everything else is sort of secondary in some ways. So there was a total mix of abilities. But what was most interesting was, particularly certain Asian countries, the students had come with a better ability maybe of following instructions, and not quite as much capability of making their own decisions. So often if I would say, here's the technique, you could go in these directions, some people could confidently, because they're used to making art, go off and try things out. Some people would just need a slight direction, but some people needed to be told which direction to go in to try first. They couldn't make their own decision of which way to go. And I found that mix of I guess culture and what you'd learn at school and how teaching happens at school so interesting. So I'd be really intrigued to teach guitar building in different places, not just to see the skills that people have, the natural skills of understanding certain tools, but also the way, excuse me, some of it is maybe creatively open, some of it's more strict. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. I don't know. I'm going off on a weird tangent there in my brain.
No, it's a really good point, because in fact, for me, I had the kind of almost a reverse thing, that I taught some Japanese people to make guitars, and then I had a couple of Western students who kind of said, "Can you help me out? You know, I want to work on a guitar." And I'd say to them, "Okay, well, this is the process, and this is the way we're going to do it, and this is," and they're like, "No, I've got a good way to do it," and they, yeah. And so it's a funny thing. I think when you're starting out in guitar building, you actually want someone who will just listen quietly and follow directions, and then get creative later on. You know, and of course, the worst thing is the bloke who says, you don't need to tell me how to use a router. Yeah. I'm seeing a look of scared familiarity on people's faces. But yeah,
I hate the router. No doubt about it.
Well, if I do this business, yeah. No, if I do this business, I think the things that I would be setting up as well, aside from all the insurance stuff, is anything that involved routing would be using like a pin router or something, or anything which keeps their hands away from the router. Same with you know, bandsaws and all of that sort of stuff. I'd have processes set up so basically, you know, that it would be maximum safety. I will say, when I studied in Malaysia with Jeff Young, who's an amazing builder, but those sort of safety processes, they weren't in place at all. Just kind of like, there's the drill press. Go for it. There's a table saw. What could possibly go wrong? You know. Oh yeah.
So I've just picked out some random pictures from your Facebook.
Yeah.
Is this your workshop, or is this one of the places you were?
That's my current workshop, and the guitar you have. So when I was working from home, when I was working in my apartment, I knocked myself together a bench out of random wood that I got from the local hardware shop. And when I moved to the workshop, I built a new bench out of plywood with, as you can see, a vise on the front. But I didn't want to throw away my old bench, so I turned it into a guitar.
Oh, lovely! Yeah, fantastic.
And so all of the weathering that you see on the front of that guitar is what would have been about 5 or 6 years of me making guitars by hand. You know, that's oil spilled on it and drill gouges and saw cuts and everything in that guitar. So every time I pick that guitar up, it's in my workshop still. It's the workshop guitar. You know, it's a reminder. Yeah, and if you look on the back, you can actually see, I think that's an SPF marking or something, right? You know, there's the wood marking. So
when I first saw it, and again, if anyone's listening, I'm sharing from the Barnaby's Facebook page. I'll put a link to that when we finish in the description. When I first saw that, I thought, is that the light from the window shining through? But now I see it must be where the wood's faded, where it was leaning on things, or things were.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see where the table leg was.
Yeah, that's the leg, right? Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and that guitar just hangs up in the workshop. I use the name James Ralph when I build guitars because James is my middle name and it was my father's middle name. So it's a kind of tribute to him. And there you can see, if you look at the guitar, you can see all of the little dents in the wood and saw cuts and everything.
Yeah, fascinating.
It's a really cool, and I mean, it's a really cool guitar. People come to the workshop and they play it, and I've been offered all sorts of money for it, and I've just said, you know, guys, it won't have the same meaning to you that it does to me. It's my old workbench.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. And you can see there's a skateboard there as well. And what happened was, one of my guitar making students, a girl called Shizuho, she's a fantastic guitar maker, and she's a singer. Actually, she's a singer I work with. She just decided she wanted to make a skateboard one day, and I'd never made one, and so we knocked one up. So yeah, it's good fun.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I do think it's lovely to make a telly out of some old wood. I mean, I've got mine's made out of an old scaffolding board that was in the garden for about 5
Oh, really?
And it's one of my favorite guitars. It's why not? You know.
Yeah, I'm very inspired by that.
Yeah.
They're really good. I mean, I'm making a telly at the moment, and I just like them so much. You know, they're just. Yeah, and you hear this phrase again and again. You hear people say, "Oh, Leo got it right," but yeah, he really did. Yeah.
I've just found a picture of one of your students' routed top. So working away with a router there.
Yes, that's right. I'm trying to remember if that is that. That's her. That's Shizuho. Yeah, I was going to say.
So, do you have a? I didn't realize that you have had students. You're implying it's regular, the students that you work with.
Well, I mean, my regular job keeps me really busy. So, you know, I get people dropping by from time to time. The problem is matching their schedule with my schedule. I mean, anything extracurricular you want to do in Japan is always a disaster. I'm in 2 bands. I play as a guitarist in a couple of bands. And the hardest thing is always finding rehearsal time. You know, a time when all the band members are free to just go to a studio and do a rehearsal is, you know, it's almost impossible. So, you know, so if you're teaching somebody guitar making as well, you've got to find a time when you're both free and
yeah. That might segue nicely onto a question I had about music as well then, because I heard Marty Friedman, who is a guitarist from a band. Well, he was in a band called Megadeth when I was younger, who I loved. But he lives in Japan. He plays. He's been playing ever since with a Japanese band. And he was talking about the fact that in an interview I saw with him, how the music in Japan is structured quite differently. So the kind of standard, we've all seen those memes of 3 chord songs that you can have the same 3 chords for any songs. The sort of progressions are different and they feel a bit different, and the way the music is written and works and what people are used to hearing is quite different. I wondered if there's anything about guitar design that is different because of the sort of things that people playing that's different. People need their guitars to do certain things. Like, are more people playing thrash metal and want smaller scale, more frets, and a lower action or something?
It's a really good question. There's a lot more focus on technical metal here. The 80s didn't die. And so, it's one of the weird things. You go to Ochanomizu. So if you ever come to Japan, the place you go in Tokyo is called Ochanomizu, and it's got all of the guitar shops. Ochanomizu means the water for making tea, funnily enough. But Ochanomizu, and you go there, you go out the Ochanomizu-bashi exit, and there's 20 guitar shops in this street, and it's amazing. But you walk into any one of those shops on any given day, and there's a 17-year-old school kid. He'll be shredding licks that'll melt your face off. He really will. It's just amazing. And they're out there all the time. So yeah, there's a big focus on technical metal. A lot of people, that Ibanez style precision 24 fret low action thin neck stuff, there's a real interest in that. So I will often work with people and they want that kind of setup. Occasionally I'll work with people who want the complete opposite. They want really high strings and really, thick strings and high action and all that sort of stuff. And that's a different challenge, as we all know, because setting intonation with that can be really difficult. I do a lot of that, low action setups and things for people who are playing very, very fast.
That's fascinating. I'm slightly glad that the music isn't quite stuck in the 80s here, because that would make me feel even more inferior with my
Well, it's a funny old thing. I mean, I as I said, I play in a couple of bands, and I get what we call it a gaijin pass in a way. Baby metal, yeah, baby metal. Someone said, yeah, absolutely. And Mad Capsule Margaret, yeah. It's amazing stuff. But I get a kind of gaijin pass because I'll turn up and I'll be playing, I don't know, in a band I play with, we do some Amy Winehouse songs or something, and people will just be like, "Hey, kakoi, sugoi," and then they'll be really excited because there's a bunch of foreigners doing some music, and then a local Japanese band will get up and they'll be 50 times as good and 80 times as fast and amazing, and people are like, "Sora ne." Like, oh, okay, normal music. So I'm in this kind of bizarre mirror world where being able to mess your way through a 3-chord song is suddenly impressive if you're a foreigner. There's actually a book. There's a book called Music in the Making of Modern Japan. And it talks about this aspect of music, and it's published by Paul Grave in 2021, and the authors are Kay Hibino, Henry Johnson, and Barnaby Ralph. So there's an academic book about this, but I don't get any money if people buy copies, so I don't care. But Music in the Making of Modern Japan talks about some of these aspects of Japanese music. Talks about the idea of reception, transformation, and retransmission. So the idea of how Japanese culture took Western music, then it came into Japan and it kind of transformed it into something new, and then Japanese music went out again. And that's where you get your baby metals and people like I don't know, Kairu, Pamu Pamu, and baby metal, and Hanabi and those sorts of people. Yeah, exactly. Hitsuji Gaku, yeah.
No offense, Barnaby. I've just looked it up on Amazon, and I probably won't be ordering it because
it's really expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's £109, 99 pence, or the Kindle edition is £104, 99 pence.
I know it's an academic book, and it's designed for academic libraries to buy. I'm one of the authors, and they sent me like 2 copies, and all these people contacted me and said, I'd love to read your book. Can you send me a copy? And I'd said to them, oh, sure, when it comes out. And I had to buy about 6 copies of the damn thing because they wouldn't send it to me. It cost me a fortune. Nightmarish.
It sounds intriguing though. So is your work in academia, is that music related?
No, it just happened. I teach 18th century philosophy and literature. So I'm, that's why I have no friends. But,
I didn't know that. So,
Is there I don't know enough about 18th century philosophy. I don't know enough about philosophy, but is there a big cultural divide in presumably around the world, the West and Japan and etc.? Is what you're focusing on worldwide?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at British philosophy particularly because I was born in the UK, and so I just teach that. I'm not one of those Westerners. Get a lot of them. I'm not one of those Westerners who comes to Japan, learns about the culture, and then gets a job in a university, tries to teach Japanese people about their own culture. Yeah. This happens a lot, and I tend not to do that. Even in that book about music and the making of modern Japan, my job was to talk about the Western aspects of music. So,
fantastic. Yeah. Now, I assume that I don't know why I make this assumption, but I assume that if an academic is in a certain country with a certain focus, it could be that it's their love of that country and their academic research that's taken them there, but it doesn't have to be that at all. And if it is, it doesn't have to be that they teach. Yeah.
No, I mean, well, what happened to me was I was actually finishing a doctorate and I went out to Oxford and I was chatting with Dean in New College who was trying to convince me to do something called a JRF, which is a Junior Research Fellowship, a 3-year thing after a PhD. And it was all great, lovely chat. I was really feeling flattered at all this attention. And then we had lunch and I looked at the food and thought, oh, I can't eat this for 3 years. And I had this really hot girlfriend who's Japanese. And I thought, do you know what? I reckon I'm going to follow her to Japan. And I did. So I actually moved to Japan chasing a girl. And that was 20 years ago. So, yeah. And she's incidentally is my wife. We've been married for nearly 20 years. But
fantastic. and presumably good food every day over there.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, especially because she makes me cook. So yeah, it is. The food is great. The weather is great. The idea of living in Oxford for 3 years or spending the rest of my life working in British academia was kind of like, well, maybe it's not for me.
Sounds good.
I love. I was living in London in 2022. I had a year's sabbatical, and I was a visiting professor at King's College, and so I, got to hang out in London then, and it was really nice to be back. But Japan's great. It's a wonderful place to live. I mean, do come and do visit and do see it. It's really great.
I mean, we've already had one person in the chat, Curtis, saying how much he'd love to visit. There are not many places that I have the desire to go to in the world, but Japan is definitely one of them because of how different the culture seems and how intriguing that is. And when Scott briefly mentions it every now and then about that idea that every day is discovering something totally different, that seems incredible to me.
Well, I mean, you could have 2 people living next door to each other for their whole lives, and they could, because Tokyo is so big, there are so many people, there's so much going on, their experiences and understanding of the city could be diametrically opposite. They could live completely different lives and never see each other, be part of completely different subcultures. It's a fascinating place. Yeah.
So does that affect the design of guitars over in Japan as well?
It absolutely does. It affects how guitars are designed and how guitars are marketed as well here. Yeah.
Right.
Very strongly. Yeah. As I said, there tends to be a focus towards precision.
Right.
But as you guys will probably also know that when Gibson, for example, send Les Pauls to Japan, they send their best ones because, Japan, people are the fussiest customers. So if I go into a guitar center in, say, San Francisco, which I've done, and I look at the Gibsons on the wall, I'm like, blimey. You know, the setup's terrible, the frets are a disaster, the binding's not very well scraped. But in Japan, you know, that's where they send the ones that are done really well.
But I mean, are they so the actual design of the guitar, the sort of the aesthetic of it, is that very different in Japan to, or have they taken Western style, like the American style guitars, and just applied those? Or
mostly,
I just wondering if there are instruments that have informed guitar design, Japanese instruments, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. So most of the traditional designs, most of the designs you'll see are based on, you know, the holy trinity of Telecaster, Stratocaster, and Les Paul, if we're talking about electric guitars, which is mostly what I'm doing. And they're kind of variations and derivations from that. Some are quite archaic shapes. The ESP Custom Shop will do some amazing carved guitars, you know, angels and devils and bizarre shapes. There are other guitars that have been made, especially folk guitars, which imitate the shape of traditional Japanese instruments. So you'll find some angular shapes. There are luthiers who will build using a Japanese aesthetic. So they will build not just using Japanese woods, but kind of Japanese angles, and the tuning pegs will be based on shamisen pegs or something. But the funny thing is, those guys say that they mostly sell their guitars overseas. They get the most money for that stuff overseas. We're going to see a Japanese guitar?
Yeah.
Yes.
Look at that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that's a 84 Tusk Greco. What is it? Yeah, Tusk Greco. Yeah. So that it's got the 3 things to lock on the strings up there, and then you tune it down the bridge. But like, just as an example of a wild 80s Japanese design and color.
I can see that. Yeah.
So you can see that.
Dad used to import the Japanese guitars to Australia.
Yeah.
Oh, really? So you know more about this than I do. You know about, you know.
Grecos were my big thing. So I've got, you know, heaps of these. You know, if you want a good Les Paul, you get a Japanese one. It's, you know, you don't go to Gibson.
Absolutely. Well, one of the other guitars.
I feel like maybe the Japanese had a bit of something to prove to the USA because of maybe some things that occurred over there, and wanted to show them up a little bit.
I think you're exactly right. There was a time in the 80s where the best Fender guitars were being made in Japan. People argue that today that's the case too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, the Fender Japan is better than Fender USA, except for the custom shop. But you also get things like this. Let's move this to the middle here. So if you can see here, this is a Casio guitar. It's obviously based on a Strat. This is a PG 300. But you can see here it's got like a MIDI unit. And if you turn it over, there's all of your stuff here you can set, and it's got a MIDI pickup here.
Right.
And so these Japanese guitars take all of the technology that you associate with Japan, and they marry it to the traditional Western forms. And these will be made, as Brad will know well, these were made in the Fujigen factory. You know Fujigen, right? The Japanese manufacturer. Yeah. And there are all sorts of weird things, including, some of you will have seen these in the past. Things like this.
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys will know this, right? This kind of weird joke plasticky guitar that Casio brought out. And so, I don't know if this one doesn't have any batteries in it, but, you know, you can get on my channel. In fact, on my YouTube channel, there's an examination of some of these. And I got into the Casio guitars, and I actually built up a collection of them. So I've got one example of every single guitar that Casio made in the 80s and the 90s. And one of these days, when I get some time, which will presumably be about 6 years after I'm dead, I'd like to do a reference webpage about the Casio guitars with all the information, the different models, the difference between them, sound samples of the different MIDI things, because they've got all these crazy. Yeah, exactly. There you go. You can see that. You can see up in the up in the corner there. Yeah, there you've got a guitar with there's me talking in this room. It's got a tape player in it.
I saw somebody demoing one of those, but they bought it and it wasn't working. You know, it was hard to still get one that worked. And
yeah, I've got
one. Amazing.
I've got two of them, and one of them I've got in original condition, and it just basically it sounds horrible. It sounds like a vibrating plastic box. But the other one, the other one I actually modified. So what I did was I took it apart and I actually put wood inside it, and I set things up differently, and I cleaned up all the electronics and things, and I kind of gave it a bit more mass in places where I thought it would have an effect on the tone, and it turned into a surprisingly playable guitar.
Oh, amazing!
Good.
Yeah.
Is that something we're going to see on a YouTube clip? I'm just looking.
There's a YouTube clip there of it somewhere, but you know, yeah. So I get to work with these sorts of things from time to time too. One of the biggest issues you have with these old guitars is that the capacitors will go. They're all surface mount little bud capacitors, and they will die. And so capacitor replacement is one of the things you have to do with these guitars. I've done a video on that actually, on how to replace the capacitors on one of these guitars. But yeah,
gosh.
Yeah,
so back to the little VL tone calculator.
Yeah.
Off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah.
It's a really interesting place, but I mean, yeah, there's so much amazing stuff here, and you get jazz guitars, for example, D'Angelico. The D'Angelico guitars that you've seen, there were some made by the Vestax Corporation. This is one.
Right.
I'm actually planning to do a lot of show and tell, but they do versions of these made in China and Indonesia and that sort of thing, and Korea. But these Vestax ones these Japanese ones are considered as good as the American custom shop ones, and they go for absolute, premium prices. But yeah, it's a really beautiful guitar. So, and of course, you guys will know the Ibanez's oldest signature model from I don't have one here. I wish I did. Ibanez's oldest signature model from 1978 was the GB10. It was a George Benson guitar.
Right.
Amazing jazz guitar. And to this day, jazz players around the world love this kind of small-bodied, beautiful-sounded Japanese guitar.
It's crazy what we relate for me personally, it's crazy what I relate in my mind are certain types of guitars, certain types of manufacturers, and certain uses for certain guitars. Because for me, Ibanez is partly because of my listening to Megadeth and other bands of that period. Ibanez are metal guitars. That's what I think of them as. And to think of them as obviously making a range of guitars and range of instruments, but it's always surprising to hear they have that history beyond what's my limited knowledge of them.
Oh, I mean,
my neighbour across the road's got a lawsuit 355.
Oh yeah,
it's so beautiful. Like I had to, one of the pickups wasn't working. It actually the mounting screws unthreaded and the pickup was stuck inside the body. So I had to fish that out and solder it back on and everything. It's such a beautiful guitar. But he's got like heaps of old ball sort of stuff over there too.
Those Ibanez's are just, they're just so well made. They really are. It's a funny thing because I'm old enough that I remember as a kid people talking about made in Japan junk, and sorry, but I remember people talking about that idea, and that idea has completely vanished now. And of course, we're seeing Chinese lutherie go through the same process, right? You guys will all know Eastman guitars. And Eastman are making some of the best guitars in the world. Just, and they're based in China, and those. So we also have those cultural prejudices in the West where we'll go, stuff that comes out of Japan is rubbish, or stuff that comes out of China is rubbish. But then over time, it changes, and we.
Yeah, of course. especially, well, maybe I'm wrong, but one thing Mark Gutierrez, who's one of our other co-hosts that's on regularly, talks about is the fact that with modern technologies, if you're, for example, CNCing, it doesn't matter where your CNC is, it can produce top quality. So just having a factory where we think things are going to be lower quality is a misnomer, because it's a lot of it is produced on a machine, but then they have very skilled craftsmen working there. In fact, another friend of Corey's is coming on again this week. We've got another stream on Thursday, Andrew Knight, and he works for Guitars. And he was talking about, last time he was talking about this idea that if you have a factory, you just tell them how much money you can spend per guitar, and they work to that amount. That's the amount they can of work they can put into it. So they could easily make a guitar or all their guitars at a really high spec, really high quality, because they've got the skills, but it costs you more to do it. And that's why some of them are not as good as others. It's not because the factory's rubbish, it's because we're paying for a budget version of that guitar.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I bought 3 Harley Benton guitars a few years ago, because I was in the UK at the time, and they're all on sale, and they're all B stock. And I bought 3 of their Fusion 3 guitars, which are roasted maple neck stainless frets, and they came along and they looked beautiful. But they're a bit dodgy. The setup was a bit rubbish, and I brought them back home and I gave them all proper setups, and I did various types of modification to them, and they are 3. They play like Sir Moderns. They really do. And I mean, I've played Sir Moderns. They play like that with a good setup, because the basic wood was cut right. The cavities are right. Everything lines up. Everything's perfect. There's nothing wonky. They needed a fret job. They needed some other they needed some settling in. They needed some electronics replaced and things like that. But the basic guitar is amazing. So yeah, it's a really interesting process. The guitar manufacturer I'm working with now, Sondelli, he gets his bodies, he actually gets them done here in Japan, but he gets his bodies and necks made or assembled and cut using CNC in Japan, in rural Japan. And that's him. And so he gets it done there, and then he works to different designs. But I mean, the thing that we're talking about, the partnership that we're talking about, is bringing me on board to make sure that the guitars that go out are really set up to a kind of pro quality. That's the hope, that, make sure that everything is just, when people pick up the guitar, it feels like a $2,000 guitar or whatever.
Yeah.
And we all know perfectly well that unless the guitar has really been made in a very haphazard way, nowadays just about anything, any Indonesian-made Squire guitar or anything, we all know that we can take that and we can make it play like a custom shop guitar. I'm sure everyone's kind of done something like that with a budget guitar and taken it up to I mean, sometimes you need to, as I say, sometimes you need to replace the pots or the pickups, or bridges and tuners are another area, recut a nut or something. But the basic wood is really good. Yeah, but yeah, Sondelli, as you can see, he's got a guitar building site, so you can kind of build your own guitar, and then what will happen is it'll be customized here and go out. So. I've only just started working with him, but in the future, for people who get these, there's a very good chance that it'll have been through my hands, which is
incredible.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
I love this system they've got. I'm just experiencing it live now, but the idea of designing online and it looks like you can basically click on something, pick what you want it to look like, and the costs will change. You can see what's happening as you're going along. Yeah, really good.
It's a really good thing.
It's good to know that there is that personal luthier touch at the end by someone that knows what they're doing to give it that quality.
Well, it's a funny old thing, yeah. But I mean, any one of us would be in a position of being able to work with a company like that and just kind of make sure that the setup's right. It's yeah.
Although I was saying that I saw some incredible clips on a random Instagram page recently of a factory. It didn't say where it was, but it was a factory that were just clearly churning out budget guitars. They were just stacked up in the background, and there was almost like a conveyor belt of it being passed along, and there was someone that was just playing every single note like this, almost like she was shredding on every note and checking everything, making the odd adjustment. So these people, clearly, if they're doing that every day, know what they're doing as well. And I have no doubt the speed she was working at and the adjustments she was making, she probably does it much quicker and more efficient than me, because she's looked like she was probably getting through hundreds a day.
Well, I still remember the first time Jeffrey Young showed me how to put strings on a guitar, and he learned how to do it. This method he learned when he went out to China, and a Chinese factory had hired him to go and oversee production of some acoustic guitars and give them some feedback. And he looked at their processes, and one of the things was the way they kind of get the strings and they whack them on and they put all the things in at once and they pull them up and they wind them around and they stick them through, and they can string a guitar in seconds. It's just it's really freaky. And so the way he strings a guitar is just amazing, you know.
Incredible.
Whereas I guess that all of us are more used to being able to take our time with these things.
You're doing an amazing amount of work. I wonder, do you have time to sleep, Barnaby?
I mean, for me, that's what the 80s were for. So, no, this is the thing. I do get asked a lot about that, because, you know, I'm playing in bands and I'm making guitars and I'm working with the manufacturer and I'm working full time as a professor. I'm also a classical musician, so I do touring as a classical musician. And yeah, people ask me, you know, how do I manage it all? And I just tell them to look at me, and I go, well, you know, I'm 26. Yeah, it's just balancing time. You know, you just, yeah. And Japan, everybody's doing everything at 1,000,000 miles an hour. You know,
I was just saying, that's the culture. It comes across that you know, that's it. Your work. You know, I mean, I have to keep doing stuff myself, so I sort of sympathise with that idea. But yeah, so are you making a lot of guitars now, or are you doing a lot of sort of refitting and setting up these days?
Well, at the moment, I mean, because of my schedule, I don't get time to churn out guitars. I'm making one guitar at the moment, which is, as I said, it's a Telecaster again. It's got a Charlie Christian pickup in the neck, and it's made out of Paulonia, so the body is really light. I'm doing a one-piece neck, you know, traditional skunk stripe one-piece neck on that. I'll churn out 1 or 2 guitars a year for myself. For Sondeli, I imagine I'll probably be setting up, I don't know, 8-10 guitars a year or something, and then gradually overseeing a process whereby, as volume increases, I will bring in people and they'll do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do setups, and I help people out. There's a guy who is going to come and see me soon, who's just going to bring me a couple of guitars where I'll be setting intonation and, you know, that sort of thing. And in where I have my workshop, it's in an artists collective called Ishira Soko, and there are metal workers, there are painters, people like that. So Corey you worked in a men's shed for a long time, right?
Yeah, that's because I had no tools. So
yeah,
basically just a big sort of garage tin shed sort of thing with like multiple bandsaws and table saws and routers, and had about 2 workbenches in there, and I did probably my first 3, and then I used to get the blame for tools breaking, so I started buying my own stuff.
But I mean, for you, I mean, you're part of that community, right? You know, there are other guys around, and
yeah. I'd get a lot of the time, because I was working full time, I'd jump over at lunchtime, and you know, I'd have a half-hour lunch break, and I'd go cut, like, you know, the neck profile or cut a body out, and then take it home, and then wait until the next day they work. And they used to get the shits about me working at lunch, because they'd be having lunch. You need someone around to, you know, make sure you're doing the right thing, and then, you know, bandsaw would break, so they'd re-weld it rather than get a new blade, and then, you know, I'd get the blame because I'd waft in and then waft out pretty quick.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I went back a while ago, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, we've heard about you." Okay, well, I've got most of the stuff here now. It's just like I'm in a garden shed. So today I was working in here and it's 45 degrees. So
wow.
Like the fans do nothing. They just push the hot air and the dust around.
Yeah. Oh.
So, and I was refretting a neck because I put like normal nickel silver wiring or whatever, but it sort of, I don't know. I like using stainless now because it doesn't bend and deform so much.
Yeah, I've switched over to stainless too. I mean, the telly I'm making is going to be traditional. It's going to look very traditional. It's going to be butterscotch, all that stuff. But stainless wire.
Yeah,
I have to say that. I think my next lot of fret wire older will have to be stainless.
I just worry it's so difficult to work with, isn't it?
It's no, it's not.
It's a little bit hard to cut.
Yeah, but I mean,
if you have fret snippers, it's a bit harder to cut and a little bit more time to file, but the overall result's way better.
Yeah, and if you're set up for it and you're used to using it, it honestly doesn't feel any different to me. It's almost the same as using nickel wire for me now.
To me, it feels a lot better when you play.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. Well, you know what? Sorry.
It looks really good. I have no doubt about that. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that a lot of people say, and you'll read this on forums, places like the Gear page, right? And there'll be people on there going on about the tone of nickel fret wire and all this garbage. And I will often, I give people different guitars, and which have been fretted with stainless or something, but they look really traditional, and guitarists will say things like, "Oh, you can really hear that nickel tone," and you just go, "Yeah, sure, mate." Yeah. The thing about stainless is, and this is my 2 cents on it. When you've just done a really good setup on nickel frets, and they're polished and they're set up and they're brand new, and you're playing on them, they feel really nice. Right, we all know that they feel great. The bends are great. They sound great. Every intonation's perfect. Everything's like that. But then they deteriorate relatively quickly. They go from that state of perfection to a state of sort of near perfection. Whereas stainless, you set it up and it's the same. It's the same as a really good nickel fret job as well. And that same moment, it just stays good for much, much, much longer.
Yeah, right.
So it's.
Right,
and what was that? Sorry?
I'm ordering some. I've been convinced. Sorry, Corey.
Yeah, sorry. I just recently bought a tube of nickel silver, and it's like, it's $200 from Stu Mac, and it's like, I don't want to use it now, and I've probably pulled about 4 lengths of wire out of it, and that's about it. So, like, anyone wants some, hit me up.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I've got a couple of tubes of Stumac fret wire on the walls, and I'll use it if someone brings a guitar to me and it's a partial fret replacement.
Yeah.
I can match it with one of those, and that's fine. But yeah, nowadays when I'm putting in new frets on my own guitars, unless someone specifically asks for nickel, I'll put in stainless. And I'm not enough of an arsehole to do it, but I'm almost tempted to put in stainless and tell them it's nickel, but I won't. But yeah, it's a funny thing. I mean, again, you guys must all be really familiar with people who've read a bunch of stuff on forums like the Gear page. And they've got all of these ideas that they've developed about guitars, what they're supposed to be, and how one thing is supposed to sound like this and another, and you meet one of those people and they come to your workshop and they say, well, I want, it's got to be nickel wire and it's got to be, 17 winds to the left under the light of the full moon, and
So what they were called on.
What was that? Say?
I remember what they were called
magic,
What were they called on the forum? I can't remember.
Fucking cork sniffers.
Yeah, cork sniffers. That's it. Yeah.
Sorry, Dave. Walked over the top of you.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, that's the thing. The other good thing for me is one reason, you know, people were saying it's nice that I work for charity, but I'll tell you one of the good things about it is that they can't ask me for their money back.
We've had many discussions about clients and expectations people have, and often based on, you know, things that they've read, things they've seen.
Yes.
Do you think we're good to sort of end off today? Have you got? I know you have your first Les, or one of your first Les Pauls you built there. Have you got any of your other instruments we can do a bit of have a look at on the screen that you can tell us a bit about them?
Let me see.
I don't want to push you. I didn't tell you we're going to do show and tell.
No.
I've seen the Casio ones. I kind of.
How about this? This was the first bass I ever made, and I don't really play bass. But this is made of Japanese pine. It's called matsu, and it was just from a local lumber yard. I wandered in there. There was a big, thick piece of pine, and I thought, "Oh, that's thick enough," which has also been the way I've thought when I've dated in the past. But and I happen to have. I happen to have some flame maple sitting around, and so I did myself a flame maple neck. It's quite a nice.
Lovely. Yeah, it's very nice.
And this is, I think it's called Ipe or Ipe. Yeah, it's like almost like Jarrah if you're thinking of Australian woods. It's really hard. The fingerboard's made out of it, and I did the pickup covers in it as well, and I did the knobs. Lovely. You can see the knobs are maple and that as well. Babbitt's Bridge, the control cover is in that wood as well. And it's a beautiful wood. Again, it's an alternate tone wood, which is something I'm sure you guys have talked about before. So this is an alternate tone wood, and the body is an alternate tone wood. It's just, you know, commercial matsu pine and Ipe. The only wood that's traditional, if you're thinking of Fender style guitars, is the maple neck. This has got a single truss rod, but it's double reinforced with carbon fiber. I do a lot of carbon fiber reinforcement on my necks. I've been experimenting with carbon fiber from a company called are they called Dragon Plate? And they do you know those guys, right? And they do a truss rod substitute insert. And I did that on a Wengy and Purple Heart neck, two guitars with Wengy and Purple Heart necks, and those true temperament frets, the wiggly frets. And then Dragon Plate, so they've got no truss rod, they're through necks, they've got ebony boards, the wiggly frets are now done in stainless, the true temperament frets, and those are really fun guitars. But yeah, this is an example of a bass I made, and this was, again, back in the days before I had my workshop, so everything was being done with hand tools. So
it looks incredible. The obvious mistake of your first build that you've put too many strings on it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I wasn't. Well, the thing was, when I started making, I wasn't sure if I was going to do a bass or a guitar, so I just sort of met in the middle.
That build's on YouTube, isn't it?
Yeah. There's the whole build diary for this is on YouTube. Very low res videos of me going through this. And then, as I showed you a P90 before, this is one of my guitars. It's based on a Les Paul Junior double cut. The body is Spanish cedar, and I made. Obviously, I made the guitar. I cut the pick guard from a really nice acrylic. It's a really good acrylic you can source here in Japan. Lies, Daniel. And then it's a Palfero board. And there's an R there for Ralph. So again, this is from my hand tool era. Yeah, so yeah, these are genuinely, you know, no power tools have touched these guitars. These were even the holes for the tuners were done with an egg beater drill.
Oh, incredible.
Gosh.
Yeah. And soldering, because I really, really wanted to see how far I could take it. And this is genuinely true. The soldering for these, I did I managed to get myself a little butane gas-powered soldering gun. So I could say that, yeah. So the only power that I used when I was building these guitars was for the electric light in the room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Gosh. Hey, that reminds me of my dad doing soldering with a soldering iron that we used to put over the gas on the cooker.
Oh!
Heat up the end of the iron, and then you've got a couple of minutes before it cooled off.
Wow, what patience.
Oh, that's a proper thing.
That dates me, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, having said that, I'm not sure if these ones were done with that soldering gun. Now, if you go back and look at the videos, maybe they weren't. But I did a bunch of guitars with that soldering gas gun. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, this is handwork.
I'm always just amazed that people can make a body by hand, because that whole cutting the initial shape. I've seen one person made a video of them just with a saw slowly cutting out bits of their body, and maybe they just made it look more complicated than it should be. But I just bandsaw all the time for me.
I actually discovered that when you use a bow saw, what the trick is, you get yourself a bow saw, you draw the body on both sides, and then you stick a mirror up behind the bench. There's your trick, so that you can see the other side, and so you can see, if you're getting close to the line on the other side. And a bow saw is, it's caveman technology, but wow, they work. If you've got a well set up bow saw, I could cut out a body in 15 minutes.
Wow.
Well, that's because of your massive muscles that you've.
Yeah, that's my enormous muscles, and then I would just flick my long blonde hair around and say, "I'm done." But yeah, so the thing is also, the more you do stuff with hand tools, the faster you get at it.
Yeah.
And now, even though I use power tools, hand tools are a big part of my philosophy, and what I think they've imparted to me as builder is an understanding of the wood and a sense of precision, which is really important. I genuinely think that being able to use hand tools is a really important skill. You should be able to use chisels and planes. And for me, the most challenging part of all of these was the pickup cavities, because when you're doing that with hand tools, it's quite hard to make essentially those 90-degree cuts and clean the bottom of the cavity up so it's all right, But that's where you use router planes, and you like the bow saw. Discovery of the right tools, and then learning the process makes it all work much easier. It's fantastic. And just to say, the lies that Owen was mentioning before on the screen were just about me saying that basses should have 4 strings. I figured that was the case. Yes.
Nothing about something you were saying.
I'm with you, Daniel. 4 strings. You don't need any more.
Well, the thing is, I didn't want to put a string rest on it, so that's what I used the 5th string for.
Yeah.
Those timbers you used there, you said one was like a Japanese pine. What's like if you had like a domestic timber there, like what's the go-to for luthiers there if they want to use Japanese timbers? Is there like a special timber that you guys lean into?
So the softwood, or the woods that you'll find, there's keyaki, which is quite a hard wood, and it's really beautiful. And Aria were using it, and Yamaha were using it in the 80s and the 90s. So some of the guitars you have will probably have keyaki in them. Sugi is a really soft wood, but it's quite beautiful. And so there are more and more builders who are going towards that. Again, Kitty, Paulonia. Again, you're seeing more and more guitars made with that. Matsu isn't actually the best wood for guitars, partly because it's a very resinous pine. So you got a lot of sap and you got a lot of resin, and it doesn't work so well. If you get the right piece, it can be very, very good. I've done tellies, and I've done this bass and a couple of other things in it, but not so many. The most interesting wood I've used is a wood called Kaya, which is used for high-end Go boards. You know, Go, that black and white stone game that people play.
Yeah.
The boards for that, Kaya, the wood is protected, and it's so rare that you're only allowed to harvest it if the tree falls down naturally. So there are people who go out into the forest to see if the Kaya trees have fallen down. And I had someone who had a Go board that had cracked that they were throwing away. And I've done a couple of guitar bodies, or the wings for a couple of modern guitar bodies out of Kaya. But for most builders here, their go-tos tend to be Western timbers for electrics still. And it's a pity. I would be really happy to see more builders working with Japanese timbers. And funnily enough, that's actually one of the things that Sondelli is doing, is he's working a lot with kiri. And, you know, you have to be careful with it, because especially when you're working on it, you breathe on it and you put a dent in it before it's finished. But he's working with kiri now, Japanese kiri. So I'm hoping that'll become a more standard wood. And there are people around the world who've worked with Paulonia. The tradition with Paulonia is that if a girl is born into your family, what you do is you plant a Paulonia seed in the garden. By the time she's old enough to marry, the tree has grown up to a point where you can make the wedding chest.
Oh, great.
This is really fast-growing, sustainable timber. So my guess is that Paulonia may become the go-to guitar wood in the future. But probably you've got guitars there with keaki in them, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, it's a long answer. Sorry.
No, it's good. I was just interested to try and find some timbers from there.
Yeah. I mean, well, one of the things is, if you ever do come to Japan, I'll drag you out to come have a cuppa, come have a beer. I'll drag you out to a lumber yard, and you can have a look there. Yeah,
absolutely.
There's a bunch of really interesting woods. So there are some beautiful Japanese maples. What's that? What's that, Saul? You want to come out, Corey? You want to come out?
No, I'm waiting for my chance to ask you something.
Yeah.
No, you guys were still talking, so I'll just wait.
No, go for it. Yeah.
Oh, didn't you use toothpaste to buff the guitar once on?
Yeah. I did. That's right. That was my first ever guitar, and I didn't know where to get guitar polish from, and so I thought, well, you can use toothpaste on, like, plastic watch crystals and things to buff it up. So let's have a go at Goode. And I tried different toothpastes, and I found one that had really fine particles. And I used toothpaste. It was great. And so it was a really minty fresh guitar. So had the ring of confidence.
Back in the day, you did a pickup cover with like microphone, like the mesh as a sort of insert too, didn't you?
Yeah, I did that. That's on a telly that's actually in Australia. It's on the Gold Coast, that one.
Okay.
And these you can't see it under here, but the bobbins for these are made out of plastic from broken CD covers.
Oh, nice.
So I just took that and repurposed it with a bit of super glue and made myself some bobbins, and then inserted some magnets into them. And because I wanted custom bobbins for the 5-string, and so I've done all sorts of crazy stuff.
Barnaby's actually the only person that's been on here that's got a Wikipedia page too.
Oh,
yeah. Although that's not about me as a guitar maker.
No.
And it's a weird thing, because I had no idea. And somebody told me I had this Wikipedia page, and I've no idea where it came from or who did it. But it's one of those things. It's about me as a classical musician, I think, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, it's classical track recordist.
Well, I'll go and look that up, and I'll add it to the list. Incredible. Barnaby, that's been so interesting. I said before we started, I wasn't sure where conversations go. I feel like we could go on for another 3 hours.
No.
Well, I feel really bad because I didn't get to chat. You've been asking me questions, and I feel like I've just sort of been dominating the conversation. So I really apologise for that.
Oh no, not at all. One of the things that we get as feedback is when a new guest's on, people want to hear as much from them as possible.
Yeah.
And especially when it's someone that we haven't met before, who's doing things that are different or in a different place or in a different way. It's just even if you talk about things that aren't directly things we're going to do ourselves, it's just inspirational to hear new creative ways of working. and people that are enthusiastic about stuff. So
I think I was just going to second that. It's very inspirational just to hear. I mean, the sort of things you're doing, is sort of, you're just launching in there and doing it. And that's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Cheers.
So what I'll do is, obviously, people can watch this in the future. If you're watching the future, leave some comments. I'll try and pass them back on to Barnaby if you can. We'll put the audio up at some point in the next week as well. We've got a few extra streams this week, and everything's a bit out of sync to normal, so there'll be a few streams going up at different times. And I'm not sure yet what's going to happen past March, because I haven't got anyone scheduled past March as a guest. But I'm thinking that maybe we should, for a while, stop inviting new guests on and get people back, because, like you're saying, sometimes it's great to hear about someone, but also just to have a general conversation with those people again is often takes us in new directions. So it'd be brilliant if you'd want to come back at some point, Barnaby.
Yeah, could be good fun. Yeah,
I'd
love to.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we could do another Yerg's Cup one too.
Yes. We haven't.
That sort of fell on the wayside a bit. I feel bad about that because I was off, not promoting as much as what I used to do. So.
If you don't know about the Yerg's Cup, there is definitely a link. There's always a link in the description to these about that. Essentially, the Guitar Builders Collective, as just a group of people around the world who make guitars, initially sort of started off as a group of people that were talking to each other by commenting on different threads, on different social media, etc. And Jürgen Zoller was one of those early people that were sort of gelling everyone together, regular commenter on everybody's posts and things, and unfortunately passed away a few years ago. So in honor of him, each year there's a new focus of a kind of starting point for building a guitar. You don't have to completely follow it, but the idea is it would just be an excuse for people to build and share what they're doing. And Corey, over on Instagram, you regularly sort of share photos of what people are doing. If you tag I Am Yergs in it. We've also got the forum where people discuss it as well. But yeah, good call, Corey, to have a focus on that. We should arrange that for next month, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to say, Corey, congrats too on the Alien Ant Farm stuff. I mean, wow, that's really inspirational, right?
Amazing.
Just stunning. I haven't had a chance to say. I mean, I've said congrats in DMs and stuff, but it's my chance to say it face to face. It's just that was such a cool thing.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. For a while there, I didn't think it was going to happen, but I tend to normally be more of a pessimist than an optimist. So, especially when if it's my own sort of stuff. But that's good. One of the best nights I've ever had. And
yeah.
So, in case people don't know, Corey, can you give us a quick potted history of what happened, what you did for Alien?
I made Dryden Mitchell a guitar and a ukulele. He didn't know about the ukulele, and ended up getting in contact with him. Well, I asked him first whether he wanted one, and he said yes. So, and then got him. Ended up seeing him a couple of weeks ago and hung out with him for a while. Went backstage and just chatted for ages and that. And he was just. Everybody who walked past, he was showing the guitar too. Like he was just that excited about it. I was going to take a video of it, and he pretty much took the case out of my hand before I even had a chance to get my phone out.
Brilliant.
Like with the ukulele too, they were all, like the whole band was like, "Oh yeah, man, this is sick," sort of thing. So that was good. It's very surreal, like just building a garden shed and then have something like this happen.
Fantastic. And I've put links to everyone's Instagram, etc. below. So if you check out Corey's Instagram, you can see some images of both the uke and the guitar.
Yeah, there's a pinned post that I did the other day and sort of explaining just the past 10 months really, like everything sort of feels like it's turned around a fair bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like I still have doubts about my stuff, and then like to get feedback that I got the other day, it's like, okay, well, some of those doubts gone.
Good.
Corey's guitars. Corey's very prolific, and a lot of the techniques you use, Corey, are just amazing. Like they hurt my head watching the way you laminate and put things together, but also the speed that you build things at is incredible as well.
Well, those guitars and uke are pretty basic as far as construction went. Like the neck was actually one piece, not 449.
Which isn't an exaggeration.
Yeah, and like the ukulele, it had like a little bit of flame maple in the scarf, and it had flame maple fretboard and bell top and back, and it was just beautiful. Like Glyn from Mr. Glyn provided pickup for that, and he listened to me silly ideas, and we came up with like a little wide range style humbucker for the ukulele, which was really cool.
Excellent.
And like, if anything comes out of it, I want to try to bring, suggest Glyn and Josh at Righteous Sound, like as far as pickups go, if someone's not really, brand, well, what's the word? Like they're just stuck with the one brand sort of thing, brand loyal, Like I want to bring like people, like, if I happen to make him another guitar down the track, like I'd like to, get it like maybe mix both of them together, like do a neck pickup from Glyn and one from Josh or whatever, like. I just think we're all in it together.
Yeah,
like it's a big thing. It's like this whole thing's not about one person; it's about like everyone. So
exactly, and that's back to the O's Cup. That's what that's about. The idea that by building things, you're sharing, you're getting people to comment and support you, and can ask for help and questions. A bit like the forum sounded like when you started out.
Yeah, there's a few knobs in that, but at the end of the day, like I think Barnaby knows a couple of people I'll talk about. But we tried to get Freddie on. We might have to try to hit him up again. I'll send him a message on the forum.
Have you had Matt Loxley on yet?
No.
Matt Loxley's he's in the UK. He's amazing maker. He's somebody to check out. Yeah,
I know his name, but I can't think why.
He does a lot of really beautiful guitars, including some red special guitars.
Oh, I know his name because I've looked up the wrong Matt Loxley.
All right.
So on that forum, we had Sully on there too.
Yeah, that's right. Sully was on there. He was, and now he's huge, right? He's just everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, those Loxley red specials are lovely.
Yeah, he does beautiful work. In fact, there's a guy here who designs, a guy called David Bisoli, who designs a tool called the Katana, which is an understring fret leveling tool that can be, it's a really amazing tool. And Matt wanted one, and so when I was in the UK in 2022, I picked up one here and took it across for him. So, yeah. But he's really good. He's, really good guy. So. I know you just said you're not going to get your guest on, but he'd be someone good. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a quick look at his Instagram, and high up on it is a Les Paul headstock break.
I'm sure. Yeah, it's the standard. I mean, I'm so grateful to Gibson. If I ever did this for my full-time job, that would be my bread and butter. Refret setups and Les Paul headstock breaks would just be.
Yeah, I just did an Epiphone one on a Dave Grohl signature.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues with that. Like they have I think it's 17-degree tilt back on them.
Yeah.
And then once past the strings past the nut, they kink up towards the bass side.
Yeah.
Which instead of having a straight string pull, they sort of kink up towards.
Oh yeah.
The low E, and it's like. And I was saying to Jackson from Big Unit, because he's got one, I said, "Oh, does yours do that?" And then he goes, "Oh, never look," and he comes back, "Yep." I go, there's truss rod cover have 2 different sets of screws in it. Like it's a 3-screw thing, but there's 2 the same and one's totally different. Like, why wouldn't you just have the same screw?
Yeah.
Like it's just, I don't know.
It's another thing you get with the Japanese Les Pauls. They got the volute on the back.
Yeah.
So just one little inclusion there, just to make them that little bit better again.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. You must know the Navigator Les Pauls, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful things, yeah.
I haven't had one in my hands, but yeah, do not have them.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah.
Isn't Edwards like a good brand of Les Paul and that?
Yeah, yeah. There's Edwards, there's Greco, Navigator,
Bernie.
Yeah. All those, yeah. And they're all connected. So, yeah. There's a Hoshino Gakkai and there's Fujigen Gakkai, these big factories. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, I've been chatting long enough. I know you said we've kind of gone over time. I'm sorry for that. So.
Oh, no, not at all. We diverged onto other things which were also very important and interesting to talk about. Corey's success. Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. So what I'll do then is say goodbye to everyone. Thank you again for being here, Barnaby, Corey, Dave, and Brad, and everyone that's watching and listening. See you next week. Or no, this Thursday, in fact.
Yeah, it was Andrew.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
The Guitar Builders Collective is a group of like-minded people from all around the world at different stages of their guitar building journey. You can join us over on our forum to seek advice or share tips on guitar building processes, materials and tools, or just to share your builds. On YouTube, we have a regular podcast of guitar building chat where you can join the live stream or watch back on past episodes. Our Instagram page shares posts of members' builds and links you direct to their accounts. And for those of you on Facebook, we've got a private group that you can join, share and chat along with. The Guitar Builders Collective is a welcome and open space for all, so do pop by and say hi.